No, it's good. There's money in this unit. It's under all the trash, but it's in there.
We swooped in and got a $300 locker. Now I'm calling in the sidekicks.
I need you guys right here in the action.
Jarrod Schulz entered the world in a small, unassuming town, a place where life seemed measured and slow, and ambitions often collided with the harsh realities of circumstance. Born into a family struggling to make ends meet, his early environment was far from glamorous. Yet it was within these humble beginnings that the seeds of his extraordinary drive were sown. According to reports, even as a young boy, Schulz exhibited a quiet intensity, an almost instinctive understanding of how the world worked, and a desire to rise above it. While other children played carefree games, he studied patterns in people, the way his parents navigated financial stress, and how local business owners managed their livelihoods. His adolescence was marked by hardship and responsibility. Sources suggest that Schulz often worked long hours to contribute to the household, taking odd jobs while excelling in school. Teachers and mentors describe him as unusually perceptive, the kind of student who listened more than he spoke, yet absorbed every lesson and applied it with precision. These formative years shaped a mindset that balanced resilience with ingenuity and discipline with creativity. Interviews hint that these early struggles were critical in forging the relentless drive that would define his career. Despite the challenges, Schulz was never content with mediocrity. Friends from his teenage years recall a young man who carried an air of quiet ambition, often sketching out ideas for ventures, planning how to overcome limitations, and dreaming of opportunities that seemed worlds away from his reality. While peers were satisfied with conventional paths, Schulz's gaze was fixed firmly on a future where he could create, influence, and achieve on a scale far beyond what his hometown could offer. The first major breakthrough came in his mid-20s. Schulz had reportedly identified a niche in the market that others dismissed as trivial or too risky. With minimal resources and a small circle of collaborators, he launched his first initiative, a local project that gained attention quickly for its innovative approach. Observers note that Schulz possessed an unusual ability to combine instinct with analysis. Where competitors relied on standard practices, he leaned into intuition, calculated risks, and a willingness to adapt rapidly. Even minor setbacks were used as lessons, and every misstep seemed to sharpen his foresight. What distinguished Schulz during this period was not just his business acumen, but his mindset. According to interviews with former colleagues, he had an almost obsessive focus, a capacity to work tirelessly without complaint, and a charisma that drew both admiration and envy. His ambition was accompanied by a magnetic confidence, one that inspired loyalty in some and suspicion in others. Yet, even as his star began to rise, subtle tensions were emerging. Disagreements with mentors, partners, and friends suggested that Schulz's vision, while extraordinary, sometimes clashed with the expectations and norms of those around him. Throughout this phase, foreshadowing of future conflict was evident. Schulz's pursuit of success was relentless, and he often pushed boundaries that others hesitated to cross. Reports indicate that he could be intensely demanding, expecting the same level of dedication from his team that he demanded of himself. While this drive propelled him forward, it also sowed seeds of friction that would later become central to his narrative. Despite these challenges, Schulz's rise during these early years was nothing short of remarkable. He transformed obstacles into opportunities and setbacks into stepping stones. Friends, colleagues, and even casual observers were captivated by his ability to see potential where others saw risk. It was a period of learning, experimentation, and relentless ambition, laying the foundation for a life that would soon captivate public attention. Even at this early stage, attention lingered, a hint of the storm to come. Schulz had everything that promised success, yet the intensity of his drive suggested that the journey would not be easy. There were whispers of early disagreements, moments of near burnout, and signs that the man destined for extraordinary achievements might also face profound personal and professional challenges. It was the perfect setup for a story of triumph intertwined with tragedy, a tale that would later unfold in ways no one could have predicted. By his late 30s, Jarrod Schulz had ascended to heights few could have imagined. His early ventures had grown into significant enterprises, reaching far beyond the small local projects that had first marked his rise. According to reports, his work touched multiple industries, and his strategic decisions began influencing markets in ways that attracted attention from high-profile partners and competitors alike. Schulz was no longer just an ambitious entrepreneur. He was a figure whose choices could ripple across entire sectors, shaping trends and dictating opportunities. Fame and influence brought both admiration and scrutiny. Interviews with associates suggest that Schulz's charm and intelligence made him a natural leader, capable of inspiring loyalty in some and envy in others. His rise, however, was not without cost. Sources report that the pressure of his expanding empire weighed heavily, and even in the midst of public success, he faced a constant struggle to maintain control. Every decision carried far-reaching consequences, and even minor errors were magnified under the spotlight of media attention and investor expectations. With power came lifestyle changes. Reports describe a world filled with high-profile events, luxury offices, and opportunities that few could dream of. Yet, this glamorous exterior masked an increasingly isolated reality. Schulz, once surrounded by collaborators and friends, began retreating into a bubble of his own making, driven by the relentless need to stay ahead. The very traits that had fueled his rise, his sharp intellect, foresight, and uncompromising drive, also began to create barriers between him and those closest to him. The turning point in Schulz's story emerged unexpectedly. Allegedly, a high-stakes deal went wrong, sparking conflict with business partners and shaking the foundations of his influence. Rumors and reports circulated about disagreements over strategy, miscommunications, and perhaps even betrayal. The man who had once seemed untouchable now faced questions about judgment, reliability, and the limits of his own control. Publicly, Schulz maintained his composure, but insiders describe a period of intense stress, nights of sleepless deliberation, and a growing awareness that success alone could no longer shield him from vulnerability. Despite this, Schulz's reaction was audacious. Sources suggest he doubled down, taking even greater risks to reclaim lost ground, demonstrating a resilience that many found both inspiring and alarming. Friends noted an almost obsessive determination, meetings lasting hours into the night, strategy sessions revisited countless times, and a drive to anticipate every possible outcome. Yet, as he sought to regain control professionally, his personal life began to fray. Close relationships suffered, and the isolation that had begun during his rise intensified. The man who once commanded attention was increasingly navigating a world of solitude, burdened by the weight of decisions that only he could make. The fame that once elevated him now added pressure. Every move was scrutinized by media outlets and industry peers, and controversies, whether minor missteps or amplified rumors, threatened to tarnish his reputation. Reports hint at disagreements that escalated into public speculation, conflicts that were magnified by the media, and moments where Schulz's confidence appeared to falter. The tension between his desire for perfection and the reality of human error became starkly visible. By the end of this chapter in his life, Jarrod Schulz had achieved remarkable professional success, but was confronted with a precarious reality. The higher he climbed, the harder the fall seemed possible. His story became a study in contrasts, triumph shadowed by tension, genius intertwined with vulnerability, and a life that dazzled publicly while quietly unraveling behind closed doors. Questions loomed over every choice, every relationship, and every decision, setting the stage for the tragedy that would define his journey, that end the years that followed his meteoric rise. Jarrod Schulz's world began to shift in ways that few could have anticipated. The same drive and ambition that had propelled him to prominence now seemed to exact a harsh toll. Reports suggest that professional pressures intensified, personal relationships frayed, and health struggles quietly emerged behind the public facade of success. The man once celebrated for his innovation and strategic brilliance was increasingly confronted with the fragility of both fortune and human resilience. Public perception shifted dramatically. Where Schulz had once been lauded as a visionary, critics began to scrutinize every move. Allegedly, former collaborators expressed caution in their assessments, highlighting disputes over decision-making, trust, and direction. Media outlets amplified these tensions, framing his story as one of caution, speculation, and intrigue. Even minor controversies, rumored disagreements, delayed projects, or strategic missteps were magnified, creating a narrative that painted Schulz as a figure struggling to maintain control. Isolation became a recurring theme. Interviews with close acquaintances suggest that Schulz increasingly retreated from the public eye, avoiding events and media attention that once defined him. Allegedly, he sought solace in work, attempting to reclaim lost ground. Yet the very focus that had brought him success now contributed to alienation. Friends reported observing a man burdened by the consequences of his own ambition, a life increasingly defined by solitude, late nights, and reflection on decisions past and opportunities lost. The tragedy was not merely professional but profoundly human. Schulz faced the stark realities of ambition's cost. Relationships strained beyond repair, alliances that had once seemed unbreakable now fractured, and moments of doubt that became difficult to silence. According to insiders, there were instances of regret and reflection, where he pondered what could have been done differently. Decisions taken in haste, opportunities missed, and the personal sacrifices demanded by relentless pursuit of success. These moments hinted at the paradox at the heart of his story. A man celebrated for extraordinary talent, yet haunted by the very traits that brought him acclaim. Yet, the most compelling aspect of Schulz's narrative lies in the unanswered questions. Was the downfall inevitable, a product of circumstances beyond his control, or the result of choices that only hindsight can fully evaluate? How much did isolation, pressure, and scrutiny shape the trajectory of a man whose life had been defined by audacity and vision? Allegedly, even those closest to him struggled to reconcile the public image of triumph with the private reality of struggle and vulnerability. The public continues to watch, speculate, and debate. Stories circulate of missed opportunities, professional miscalculations, and personal regrets, each adding layers to an already complex portrait. Yet, Schulz's life resists a simple conclusion. There is no neat resolution, no moralized ending. Only the unfolding tension of a man whose brilliance and ambition collided with the limits of circumstance, human frailty, and the harsh glare of public scrutiny. As the story closes, the unanswered question lingers. How does a man with extraordinary vision, drive, and intellect reach a point where triumph and tragedy exist side by side? Jarrod Schulz's life stands as both inspiration and warning, a reminder of ambition's power and peril, and a narrative that leaves the world wondering what might still come next. His journey is unfinished, the final chapter unwritten, and the world is left with only echoes of a life both remarkable and heartbreakingly fragile.